Hello, everyone. I'm Calvin LeDuc. I'm not the host of today's webinar. Just give us a second. Tony's logging in at the moment. And this webinar today is going to be about our video game design course here at the VANS, the Vancouver Animation School. We were the first online school here in Canada. Currently, we have 11 courses. I can quickly just pull up the school site. Like I said, Tony is in the process of logging in. And we're up to 11 diploma courses. We started with just 2. The first 2 were 3D computer animation and concept art. Since then, we've added, usually at the request of the industry studios, 2D computer animation, advanced 3D modeling, animated short film, digital matte painting, very sought after skill required by the industry. They can't find people here in North America that know it. Effects animation, very high-end effects animation using Houdini. Esports diploma, and that is for people that want to run the tournaments and manage teams. This is a brand new course. We just started this term. Production management in the digital entertainment. So you have the creative people, and then you have management, the people that hire, the people that schedule, and everything like that. Okay, we were talking about production management. All of our courses are run by industry professionals that currently are working in the industry. Myself, I'm head of faculty at the school for the last 7 years. I have over 20 years professional experience in the animation industry, working on TV series, commercials, and Disney feature animation. And I've been an instructor for the last 18 years as well. And I'm still an instructor with the school doing 3D computer animation. Video game design is what this webinar will be about. And we have virtual reality, which I really believe virtual reality is the future. The technology, the hardware, the software keeps improving. Now, the goggles don't have to be connected to the computer. A lot of industries use this. If you have to fix something, you can put on the goggles and see remotely what the machine looks like and what the problem is and what equipment you'll need to fix something. If you're doing architecture, you can see the building's full size and see that everything is planned accordingly, correctly, that everything connects up properly, is in the right place. It's pretty exciting.
Hi, welcome everybody. This is a webinar for game design, and we are going to be talking about game design principles for engaging experiences, as well as some of the game design info about the game design program. So let's go ahead and get started. Who am I? Well, my name is Tony, and I am one of the faculties here that is part of the game design program. Um, I am a game designer, and I have worked on a bunch of games in the past, including Diablo 3, that's on console and PC. I've worked on Deformers, which is a cross-console um, battle arena type of game. I've worked on VR applications and games such as Lone Echo, which is a narrative-driven action-adventure game set in utilizing VR technology. And I've also worked on Echo Arena, which is sort of the multiplayer component of that game. And I would say it's kind of like a Ender's Game, the game that they play in Ender's Game, if you are familiar with that sci-fi series. And it's all in VR. We were one of the first studios to figure out how to give players true locomotion and allow them to traverse in VR space without inducing a whole ton of motion sickness and things that came along with VR. So there was quite a bit of tech involved. And as far as studios I've been at, I've worked at studios from Nexon to Blizzard to Ready at Dawn and to Unbroken Studios. Also, not featured in the game's list right now because they're not technically officially out. Is I have also recently worked on a multiplayer competitive Quidditch game that is currently in open beta called Harry Potter Quidditch Champions, and that should be coming out soon this year. So that'll be very exciting. It's the first game that I've worked on in the Harry Potter franchise, but it only deals with the Quidditch aspect of the game, which is super cool. So let's talk about this topic, which we're talking about designing for engaging experiences, right? And when we talk about designing for engaging experiences, I kind of like to talk a little bit about some good principles of design that brings about player engagement, right? Because when we talk about player engagement, what does that really mean, right? And I think the simplest way to boil that down to is how do you get players to actively partake in your game, and how do you get them to be an active participant, and how can you help them to be more immersed in the systems of your game, in the world of your game, and the stories of your game, and all of the things that you worked so hard to create. So and this is some of the things that I think will help, right? And the first thing is focus on the core loop, right? And what the core loop is it's a set of systems and interactions that the players will do repeatedly over and over and over and over in your game, right? And when you have a very focused and tight core loop in your game, it ensures that the players are always interacting with the game in some meaningful way, and the interaction is always meaningful to some other aspects in the game, which ties into the next part, right? One could say the simple breakdown of the core loop would be: get stuff, you use the stuff that you get to do stuff, right? Which allows you to explore and get farther, which then allows you to get more stuff, which allows you to do stuff, which allows you to explore. And you can see how one loop sort of feeds very delicately into another, and it kind of gets the player rolling on this sort of endless loop of engagement. Obviously, that's a very simple breakdown of it. There's a lot of tiny nuances that goes in between. There's like the combat loop, there's the reward loop, and all that. But that's just kind of the core structure of that, right? And you'll often find games that have very, very engaging core loops be very well received, right? Games like Mario Odyssey as an example, right? Um, the next thing we can talk about is design systemic foundations, right? When you have a robust foundation of systemic driven things and mechanics that gives the players the opportunity to experiment, it adds to the level of gameplay, right? And what does that mean, right? The way I like to reframe that is think about your game design as a box of tools that you are giving to the player to solve different problems, right? And what you want to kind of do is give inklings of perhaps there are optimal tools to solve a certain set of problems, but give the space to allow the players to be creative when it comes to problem solving, right? Um, a hammer might be the tool that you need in order to, you know, put a nail into the wall. But when you can't find the hammer, something heavy like a wrench could also do the trick, right? Is it optimal? Probably not, but is the problem solver being creative in finding other ways to utilize tools to solve problems? Definitely, right? And when you provide a system that supports those type of gameplay, then the interaction becomes more player generated, and it gives player a form of agency that they can do the things that they want, and what they think they can do, they probably get to, which is really good in retaining player engagement, right? Games like Elden Ring does a really good job of that. There's many things that the player can do, and the world is kind of set up in this very systemic way of like, well, if you're stuck in a certain point, you can go do this other thing. And from doing the other thing, you'll get the experience and the equipment and the abilities to let you eventually come back and solve this problem that you couldn't solve previously. The next thing we want to talk about is a very core tenet to not just, I would say, game design, video game design, but to design in general, right? Simple to learn, difficult to master, right? I think a lot of people think in order for a game to be good, it has to be complex, right? But I think the key in that is simple does not mean simplistic. As an example of that, I like to use the game of Go, as sort of the core example. I can teach someone how to play a game of Go in probably 2 or 3 minutes because the rules themselves are actually super simple, right? But what brings about the complexity of a game of Go is the strategy, the way you approach how the other player is playing, and sort of the long term game mindset, right? So when you design games, what you want is to keep things easy to learn so that the players can quickly pick up what they're supposed to do, but have many layers underneath so that over time, they can become better, right? So a good way to think about this is when you get a new game, the game should provide you with a day one fun, right? Which is right out of the box, you do things and you get a good result and you have a good feeling about it. But in order to make the game engaging, it needs to be deep enough to have ways to provide month one fun and year one fun and et cetera, right? I think the remake of Doom 2016 is a excellent example of this system, right? It's very simple. The rules of the game is not at all complex, right? It's a first person shooter. You are fighting demons and you go and you shoot demons. Hooray, right? But however, the things that are sort of like nested in that simple exchange of like, how do you engage with the push forward combat system, how to manage your resources, even though there's not a pickup, ammo pickup or health pickup, so to speak, but how do you manage your resources through interacting with the way you slay demons. All of those things are like a little bit more complex, right? How do you interact with the environment? How do you use the environment to your advantage? And all of those things are things that you kind of learn as you dive deeper into the game, and there are layers and layers of becoming better on that. The next thing we want to talk about is provide players with meaningful decisions, right? I think the big thing that l- gets distracts player from engagement is making trivial decisions that does not actually impact the game, right? This leads to sort of like an erosion of trust between the game and the player, because now they feel like the things that they're doing in the game makes absolutely no impact, right? So think about the decisions that you're wanting the players to make and how that affects the player in the way they interact with the game, right? I think Dishonored and these immersive sims have a lot of really good examples of meaningful decisions, right? Players can choose how they interact with the environment, with enemies, with combat encounters, and sort of play those things out. You can go the direct way and fight every enemy you come across, or you can stealth your way across, right, and not have to fight the enemies, or you can use the environment to trick them or to do these other things. And all of those create a direct impact in how you play the game, which um, keeps the players engaged because now, once again, they feel like the game is responding to the things that they're doing. Um, the next thing I want to talk about is, something that we sort of all struggle with, and this is not just in game design. I think this is in communication in general, right? Unfortunately, we have not invented a way where we can read someone's mind, which means that when you communicate with someone, you need to communicate things clearly, right? And in video games, that's, especially true because as the designer, you have a vision and a way that the player should interact with certain systems or do certain things, but you are not in the player's head, nor is the player in your head, which means that they don't actually always understand your intent. And the way you sort of combat that is create design that are focused on clarity, right? Clear gameplay systems and mechanics along with the proper feedback or whatnot, reduce player frustration, right? Because when the player isn't guessing what they have to do, but they understand what they have to do, then it keeps them it keeps them immersed in the world, right? When the player is focused on solving the problems that the game world is providing them and analyzing what they did wrong or if they used the wrong tool, right? It is a less frustrating experience than the player losing repeatedly because they simply did not know what to do or they were supposed to do something that the game didn't tell them. So a good example of clarity focused design would be the new God of War. I mean, the God of War series is all really good, but the latest ones, 2018, really illustrates that, especially in the combat sequence, right? That the moves and the specials and the abilities all have a very clear intent. And it lets the player sort of take on that role of Kratos, and everything empowers the players to do that, which helps the player sort of like immerse themselves in that world and become a part of that storytelling aspect that this new reimagined sort of continuation franchise of the franchise is really well known for. And then the last thing I want to talk about is like the player's story matters, right? I think we all play games for different reasons, and I think it's not uncommon that nowadays there's some narrative elements in the game, right? Um, whether it's go save the princess, whether it's save the world, whether it's escape from location X, Y, or Z, there's a story in there, right? But what is more interesting is the player's story, how they interact with the story, right? And I think a good example of that is like Red Dead Redemption 2, right? There is a story, there is a very deep story. But however, when you talk to people about their experiences with Red Dead Redemption, a lot of times people will tell you, you know, stories of how they played poker, how they caught and raised horses, and these things, or they walked into town and accidentally shot someone because they hit the wrong button, right? Like all of those things are the player's narrative and sort of like how they interact with the narrative of the game and create this whole new narrative of them experiencing the main character story through their perspective while adding in their own little tales to it, right? So um when you have the freedom to do that and create your own story, then it keeps the player more engaged because now they have stories that they can talk about. It's like the do you remember the one time that we tried to do X, Y, and Z and this happened? Oh man, those were good times, right? And they're still engaged with the game. They're still very much engaged with the story. Um, but the story is their own now. It is no longer just this generic story that everybody who plays the game can experience, which adds a unique perspective to that. And that sort of wraps up the principles of design for engagement. Um, However, I will say, if you are interested in learning more, well, let's talk about the video game design program. And we have a video game design diploma program, which is a 12-month program. It is broken down into four 3-month terms, right? You'll get to through the four terms, you'll learn game design foundations, game design tools, and roles of designs. You'll get to learn gameplay and level design, and also you'll be creating your own projects, right? I think the other instructors and myself have worked really hard to make sure that we are able to cover a wide variety of things. And now students from this program will be able to learn techniques using Unity as well as Unreal. So it is definitely becoming a lot more technical as a class. The advantages of this class is that there's 3 live sessions a week, right? There is 2 live class sessions, your actual class sessions, which is taught by myself or another instructor named Craig, which I'll shortly talk a little bit more about. And then there is a technical session, which is taught by Adam, which I will also tell you a little bit more about him shortly. Um, this session focuses on answering your questions, teaching you new techniques, as well as just directly helping you with what you are stuck on in terms of your projects or the things that you're working on. And we also have one review session, which is like if you have any questions over the actual materials or things that you want to talk about, in terms of the class or things that you didn't understand, that is a great session to bring that up in. And because I am still very much immersed in the game industry, and same with Craig and same with Adam, we constantly refresh this course with up-to-date information as well as what is the current trend going on in the industry. um, in fact, I regularly attend the Game Developers Conference and will talk to the students about the Game Developers Conference, as well as try to leverage um, the time I have with some of my industry friends to try to get some guest speakers from different game studios. So that way, hopefully, you'll get a perspective of how things work because they are different from studio to studio, right? Um, and then we have a video game design combined class. And I believe this is a must be on campus class. Um, if you are interested in being actually on campus and sort of taking this dual on-campus and online course, feel free to reach out to Calvin, and he will be able to provide you with more information. And as far as the instructors of the game design course class, you have myself, which I think I've already talked about myself enough. Um, we also have Craig Williams, who is a current lead designer, and he has many years of experience and has shipped many, many titles. Um, I think he is also a really good resource as an instructor, and I hope you get a chance to take a class with him and then ask him to talk more about himself, right? And then the Unreal/Unity technical learning taught by Adam Chandler, who has spent many years in the games and media industry working on both games and interactive media. So he is familiar with both uh, interaction from like a games and player perspective, as well as interaction and UI UX from a machine/consumer perspective, which I think gets you a lot of real world experience that is not just purely um, game design based, but also like real world UX based, which I think actually impacts the game design quite a bit. And for information on any of us as well as the program, you can contact um, us at info@vanness.ca. And I think that wraps up the presentation. And I want to, at the end, show you guys a little bit of examples from works that we've seen from previous students. Obviously, these videos might be very long, so I'm just going to play a little bit of each of them to kind of give you a taste of the things that our students were able to create. So the first one we're going to see is a game called Zombie Pizza. Um, and I will let that play for a little bit. And hopefully you guys can hear the audio. If not, I apologize, but hopefully the video still works. And as you can see, that the setting is a apocalyptic world, which you are a pizza delivery guy, and you are. Oh yeah, sorry about that. I think the web share is having an issue with the audio, so I can't do the audio for the games. I do apologize. But yeah, so you're apocalyptic pizza delivery guy, and the idea is you're delivering pizza to get money so you can get weapons and then ensure that you have a safe delivery of other things, and then so you can be more efficient at delivering pizza and then take the pizzas to the money that you make from delivering more pizza to fix a vehicle so that you can safely escape. Um, and then the next one is called Ani, and this one is sort of a horror themed platformer created by Frida. And this is, you want to think of like sort of dark and spooky vibes. This one's definitely um, your platformer to go to. And she did the art, the animation, as well as the game. So it's actually pretty cool as well. So I'm going to play a little bit of this one. And then the last one I will share you is called Traversal Void. And this is created by Jared. Um, and this is a sort of like an obstacle course running game. Jared was very, very into the navigation and traversal presented in games like Apex Legend or Titanfall 2, and sort of the freedom those movement models presented. So he thought to create a game that sort of capitalizes on those movement models and have you race through an obstacle. So this is Traversal Void. So as you can see, unfortunately, there's a little bit of lack of like animation stuff, which it's animation is a very tricky aspect. Which, by the way, a segue, our school Van Ness also teaches animation, so this could be perhaps another opportunity. But um, from the first person shooter perspective, you can kind of see, it's sort of like got that like Mirror's Edge slash like uh Titanfall, Apex kind of traversal. You've got wall runs, you've got mounts, you've got climbing, you've got slides, all sorts of stuff, and culminating into this like race against time while collecting items um, type of gameplay. And that is everything that I have. Thank you. I appreciate everyone being here today.
So
And
Tony,
well, yes,
let's open this up to a few minutes of questions if the
sure.
participants, you can either type your question into the Q&A or into the webinar chat, and Tony will do his best to answer them.
Yes, yes.
Favorite
Um,
color?
my
And,
favorite color. Oh, Um, teal.
Yeah, let's go for it. That'd make a great car color.
Yeah, I can't see the webinar QA questions though,
You
Calvin.
go
So
down
I
at the
appreciate.
bottom, and there should be, but I'd read them out to you if you
Yes,
can't see
yes,
them.
I appreciate if you can do that.
So I'm not seeing any questions come in. Uh, if you come up with a question later,
Oh,
guys, you can contact us.
so we have a question on, do we need to present a portfolio? Calvin, what is the process for enrolling?
Yes, for video game design, we do like to see a portfolio. We tend not to enroll people that just woke up yesterday and go, I think I want to design games or be an animator, and you've never, you know, built anything or drawn anything or designed anything or modeled anything, or show us that you have some creativity. Submit 5 images, like I said, whether it's models that you've done, computer or physical, photography, sculpture, drawings, paintings, any medium, and you'll be allowed in. If you don't have a portfolio, in order to enter into our 1-year diploma courses, you then would have to complete the 3-month Intro to Digital Arts. That also allow you to see, do you like taking online courses? Are you self-motivated? And successfully passing the intro course, you're automatically accepted for enrollment into the diploma course of your choice.
Cool, thank you. The next question I have is, what software do we need? Well, for the game design course, all of the software that we require are generally free or very close to it, right? So obviously, you need Unity, which is free. You need Unreal, which is free. I believe we also use a little bit of Twine just to kind of get used to, writing dialogue sequences and narrative stuff, and that is also free. Anything else that you might end up using, for example, you want to use like certain assets or whatnot for the games or the projects that you're working on, generally, myself or Adam will try to direct you to like the free asset stores within Unreal or Unity. So you grab those for free. And then anything else that's required is generally provided. Like if there's a Excel type of thing, obviously I think you need to have Excel, but these days a lot of people use Google as like sort of like the alternative, right? So Google Sheets, Google Docs, you know, Google presentation for PowerPoints and stuff like that. So all of that, and all of it will be on once you start class, we will definitely tell you what are the software you need and how to get them and how to install them and how to get it set up properly. Let's see. The next question is, do I need to have a project for a video game in advance? You don't actually. So the way the course currently breaks down is term one, we're going to uh, learn game basics as well as start getting you started building things. And we'll be doing Unity. I know that is not, there's pros and cons between Unity and Unreal, right? And really at the end of the day, um, it's not a particular software, it's about the knowledge that you know. So what we want to do at the game program is to get you well-rounded. So term one, you'll be using Unity, you'll be building, some levels, and you'll be making a game in Unity. And then term two, we will be switching to Unreal, in which you'll be learning the basics of Unreal, navigation, building, blueprint, stuff like that. And you'll be building a game in Unreal. And while this is happening, we are also teaching you sort of the game theory and knowledge behind the do's and don'ts and the whys and the hows, right? In terms of like the theory for game design. And then term three, this is where we now start to essentially have you go into pre-production for your project. And what I try to do is talk to you and get you to come up with an idea for your very own game, right? And we pare it down to sort of like the simplest of like how can we build a playable prototype? What are the components we need for that prototype? And what are the things that we need to work out in terms of answering design questions and be aware of when we work on this prototype. And then we start working on that prototype, right? And then term four is sort of like the culmination of it all, where we continue building and polishing the prototype, adding in sound, audio, effects if you need it, any additional things to sort of like make that prototype showable. And at the end of term four, hopefully you will walk away with quite a bit of knowledge on the theory of game design, the technical know-how of at least how to build your game and create good prototypes, right? And you'll walk away with a showable project that looks something like Zombie Pizza, Ani, or Traversal Void.
We should wrap this up. I want
Yep.
to thank everybody. I want to thank our special guest, Tony Wu, for joining us. And everybody for taking time out of their busy weekends for joining us. Have a great weekend and contact us if you have any more questions.
All right. Take care, everybody. And I hope to see you here.
Bye-bye.
Take care.